So welcome to the side event, Disrupt Collaboration, Africa and Europe in the Digital Age. This is the side of event where you are given a voice, you, the audience.
So I have the pleasure of first introducing Hans. He's from Ecotech Austria, and he's an entrepreneur who has done a lot of work in Africa. We've done some work in Kenya, and it's a pleasure for us to be here in Vienna together.
And this is Amolo Ambole from Kenya. She's from the University of Nairobi, and more important, she is from Living Lab. Living Lab is the partner of us when we are doing our learning journeys to Silicon Savannah, as we call it.
So why are we here today? We have a digital transformation that's happening in Europe and in Africa simultaneously, but it's happening in different ways. What can we learn from each other? What does this mean for African-European collaboration? Does the digital age offer new possibilities and generate ways of how people can work together? Can African-European collaboration make use of the agility and adaptiveness of the digital transformation? Can we leapfrog into new ways of mutuality?
Yeah, and maybe at that point, this side event was made possible by Projektur from Vienna, ITEP from Vienna, Ecotech from Vienna, and very importantly, from Living Lab from Kenya, represented by Amolo here. And the objective of the day is to create a message for the heads of state, heads of governments who are coming together at this very time in 2 levels below, to create a message for them how this collaboration could be disrupted or changed. If it's open to you, so the outcome of this event is open. We structured it in quite an interactive way. And if we, at the end of this 90 minutes, we do have, not getting to a conclusion, we will continue to work on that, on a platform. Actually, we will do it in 4 parts, just to tell you about the structure. First, an introduction, which we are writing now. Then we will also introduce some theses, 4 theses, what we think, how it will look like in the future. Then it's on you to work on the table, the second part, working on the tables. And the third part then is a discussion tables with the panelists here.
Yes. I'll go on to introduce our panelists. So we have distinguished panelists from Africa and Europe as well. And I'll start with Faith Kiza. Faith is the Chief Executive Officer of Rwanda Online in Rwanda. And she'll briefly introduce herself and tell us what she does and how collaboration is important to her. Welcome. Mwaramutse.
Mwaramutse. Thank you so much. I'm very glad to be here with everyone. Thanks for having me. I'm from Rwanda, as she said. I lead a company called Rwanda Online. We have a flagship product called Irembo, which is an e-government platform whose goal is to digitize all government-to-citizen interaction. So far, we've had 5 million users on the platform, and we have over 85 services running, ranging from birth certificates to land transfers to visas on arrival, as you may all have one day when you visit us. So it's really all types of government interactions are centralized on one platform to make it much easier for people to access them. If you've used us once before, you're going to likely have an easier time using us again. And given that government is the largest service provider, we interact with people all the way across the economic ladder and knowledge of ICT. And so to do what we do, we need a lot of partnerships and collaborations with people who are specialized at every level of getting to the citizen. So we work with Indian companies, we work with Israeli companies, we work with American companies. Unfortunately, we haven't worked with European countries yet, but I do feel that mutual benefit in any type of partnership could inform another new partnership. So, for example, with the Israeli company, they've come up with a technology that is very conducive for USSD, where it has memory embedded in it so that when people interact with us in the future, they don't have to log in through a cumbersome process anymore. And so that little technology alone has changed our entire bottom of the pyramid interaction. And to do this, I think what's important is innovative business models. We cannot buy large systems until we test them, so that's where the agility comes in. It's like, how can we innovate around the business model that is traditionally used by corporations in Europe or America or Israel to package that in a way where we can really test what you're selling, see the impact, and then find an innovative way to make sure it's mutually beneficial for you to keep that engagement. So we also worked with a Singaporean company. They've done this in their government before, so that was more about research around now the top of the pyramid. So if people have internet access, they have a smartphone, and they have the knowledge to use these platforms, and how does that look like? So we've worked with various people, and I'm really excited to see how other people have worked with European companies to do the same thing. But more and more we're seeing them come into the region. We now have Volkswagen working with a local Rwandan company called Osamity Lab to create an app that helps them spread just the buying a car to now like a car as a service where you use it when you need it. In fact, the CEO is here in the audience, so I'm looking forward to him sharing more, the CEO of Osamity Lab.
Yes.
So these are the beginnings of new partnerships, so I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Thank you, Faith. We'll move on to Christoph Stendel. Guten Morgen.
Hello.
Hello.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, he is the CEO and founder of Catalyst Austria. Take it away.
Yeah, fine. Yeah, I founded my company Catalyst 13 years ago. By now we are around 300 experts with 20 nationalities in 6 countries and on 3 continents. So we are quite distributed already. This summer we have established our subsidiary in Uganda, in Kampala. And since we are software developers, we work on software projects in a distributed way, just like open source software has been developed. You may know, but not really have noticed, that the world is run by open source software. Most of the servers actually run on Linux operating system and not on commercial operating systems. So when you think about how has that large piece of software been developed, it has been developed in a distributed setting. People from around the world, open source software developers, have collaborated via the internet to bring those pieces of software together. And that's not easy. Working together over a distance is never easy, but it can be done. And that's what we do really, really well. We do a great job at finding talents, identifying people who are really experts at their jobs. We then try to bring together talents with work to find challenging projects for those software developers and form teams, help them form teams and get to high-performing teams and deliver great software solutions to our clients. The topic here was to disrupt collaboration in the digital age. We speak of digitalization, we think of the digital age, but below the digital age, the digitalization, we have typically software, we automate businesses, and who is doing all that? It's on the one side business developers who come up with creative business models, but then for putting that into place, you need those software developers. The software developers are the architects of the digital age. They devise those systems. And for me, it's always interesting to see how that can spread across the world and how we can enable others, young people, young talent, to do that in an ever better way.
Thank you, Christoph. Now we move on to Sakile Tsulu. Sanbonani.
Ngiyapila.
He is the CEO and co-founder of Kisima Audio Insights that's working in Ghana and South Africa.
Yeah,
Tell us
so
more.
a bit about us. So we are Africa's music consumption data company, and essentially what we do is we try to find out why people listen to the music they listen to, and we take those analytics and then we infuse them into reports for the music industry. And some of the stuff that we do is we help royalty collection agencies across Africa, specifically in Ghana and South Africa, to be able to collect royalties on behalf of artists and distribute. We're currently in talks with some of the biggest royalty collection agencies across the world, because royalties have never been able to be collected in Africa. And so with the technology that we've built, we are now able to basically gather the data for royalty collection agencies across the world to be able to collect in Africa. And so yeah, collaboration in our space is huge because we work with artists, we work with record labels from Universal to Sony Music, we work with telcos, because if we release a product, all of these people have to buy into anything that we do. And so yeah, for the space that we work in, collaboration is big because we need buy-in from regulators in the market, we need buy-in from government institutions. So one of the things that we've just recently done is we formed an organization to empower the Ghanaian music industry, where we sit on the board and we own 10% of revenue in terms of revenue share of that organization. But we are now the engine behind the Ghanaian music industry, where we now take a portion of whatever we make, we give back to the economy, so give back to artists. So artists own about 60% of the work that we do, and then government owns about, I think, 20%, and the organization itself owns about 10%. And then this allows us to build the organization, make it profitable, while we also generate money to build it and also empower artists as well. Because that's one thing that we've realized is we can't just build streaming services in Africa, because if the telcos are not buying into it, then it's not going to happen. If the artists are not buying into it, it's not going to happen. So what we've done is we've created a business model or a franchise model, which we're now piloting in Ghana, and hopefully if it works, we can then scale it across Africa, which will then compete with the likes of Spotify, will compete with the likes of Apple Music in terms of data, and will also compete with the likes of Nielsen as well. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sakile. Next, we have Marianne Akoth Owino. Jambo.
Si Jambo.
Welcome. Marianne is an incubation manager at TechBridge Kenya. Tell us about yourself.
Great, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you in Austria. And I run an incubation hub in Mombasa, which is a secondary city in Kenya. We are funded by private investors from Norway, and our main investors run sustainable and profitable startups in Norway, and they looked to expand within sub-Saharan Africa. In Kenya, we only have footprint in Mombasa, but we're also looking to start something in Kampala, Uganda. So what we do, we're the typical incubation hub working at the tail end of investment, where everybody is scared to put in their money because it's quite risky in the early stage. But we think that this is vital. Our end goal is to impact and attack this animal called unemployment in Africa, but in a way that is focused on profit, right? So we are about social impact, but we're also about profit first. I think that's good news for a lot of people here. Yeah. So typically, we empower young people, mostly in university and undergraduate studies, but we also work with people who are more mature, who've tried to start their businesses but have not been able to scale for various reasons, either capital, right, or capacity building in terms of knowledge and training. But also we really take seriously the intervention of mentorship from experienced people, both from Africa, Kenya itself, and also in Norway. I could say that our collaboration not only drives in the case of mentorship, but we also look at we also work with corporates, rather, in the local setting within Kenya. And, yeah.
Great. Let's give a hand to our panel.
So, thank you very much. We have quite a distinguished panel with lots of knowledge and experiences in international collaboration, including European, African, or African-European collaboration. And now we want you to discuss something, but before that, we quickly want to introduce 4 theses to you as a basis for discussion. And I ask Michael Lausecker to come here to present these 4 theses. Please, come here.
Good morning. Yeah, the first one, we've been working together in putting these theses together, and the first one I think is more like a fact than a thesis. It's all about empowerment, and you're going to tell more about the details. But reality is that in order to be part of the digital world, what we really need is bandwidth, meaning high-speed internet access, and education. And
so in the digital age, web access empowers individuals and organizations, and this is especially important if you look to Africa, with the African middle class, the growing African middle class, which are the natural partners for Europeans, as I would say. First thesis. Second?
This is maybe a bit more provocative sort of hypothesis, but we suggest that in future we're not going to apply for a job. We are trying to find out how we can create value for you, and given the idea that we are empowered through the digital world, this might even be easier and more important. And especially it will be important to focus on the human-centric sort of value that we need to generate, because all of the rest is going to be done by machines, right?
So you have it on the table. We formulated it in the way that in the digital age, income will be created by innovative solutions rather than by traditional jobs, which puts in question a bit all of our politics, actually, because we are still going for the steady jobs, yeah? Especially Europeans, you can hear, saying, oh, in Africa they need jobs, 20 million, 22 million a year, new jobs. How will that happen in the digital age? Probably it will be entrepreneurial, in a way. And looking now at the informal sector, which the African economy is based on, I think Africa has African countries, some of them, or many of them, a critical mass of them, have quite an advantage going into an entrepreneurial age. Europe can learn from Africa. Third?
Well, and the next thing, given that we sort of do not apply for a job but seek to create value, what is driving us then is a purpose, maybe more than anything else. And especially location in the digital world doesn't matter too much. Culture does.
In the digital age, purpose-driven organization will solve local problems. The purpose of any organization is to solve a problem of customers or a target group. The line, this is my thesis, especially, people do not agree on that all the time, and especially when we discussed it beforehand, they did not agree. The line between for-profit businesses and non-profit organizations blurs. When there's a purpose, culture and diversity become unifying enablers. Fourth and last thesis, yeah?
Yeah, that was about the idea of co-creation, and we said that the digital world is moving much faster than the world we used to walk around, and much of that is driven by the idea of learning as fast as possible, and that also needs to implies that we need to change the way we collaborate together. And I think if we look around, or also on an international corporate level, we see the term agile on the agenda very often today, and this is, I think, shaping collaboration in future.
Co-creation, the new buzzword, co-creation will shape African-European collaboration. It will be agile teams. Agile is another buzzword, we know, but whatever it is, we will discuss that. It's the digital age, or the future collaboration will be based on teams, basically small, diverse people from all over the world, from Europe, from Africa, but also from other parts. And as you see it already in the software industry, this will also spill over to other industries. We will be much more in the mood of test and learn than plan and implement. So there's no time, or the age is over where European companies go to Africa and say, oh, I have this product and I'm going to roll out it there in Nigeria or anywhere else. Test and learn in agile teams. And leadership will be much more about creating, this is the thesis also, the right conditions for collaborating than giving direction. So this is the fourth thesis. Again, we put it in here, and now we want you to work on that.
Yes. So we've presented the four theses, and as you can see on your table, there's a number. So what we're going to do is that we're going to spur ourselves by getting the right kind of questions that will help us to understand this thesis better. So we want you to help us formulate the most important question for your thesis. So each table is going to work on one thesis. So table 1 is working on thesis 1, table 2, thesis 2, 3 is working on 3, and then 4 is working on thesis 4. Then we start over again. So table 5 works on 1, table 6 works on 2, and I can see we have 7 and 8. So each thesis is going to have 2 tables, right? Is that clear? We are all clear on how we're going to work on that? And then you'll find that in each table you have a facilitator. So maybe if each facilitator can just raise their hand so that we know that each table has a facilitator. I can see table 8 and 7 maybe don't have facilitators, so we can see how to maybe merge those tables or to get facilitators onto those tables. Yes? So there's someone going around who will help us with that. And so what we want to do is that each facilitator is going to help us to get us into a question mood. So we are calling this question storming. And the idea here is to discuss and prioritize on what is important for you. So you'll start off with individual questions, and then you'll discuss and hopefully come to an agreement, or maybe not, but you'll be able to give us 1 or 2 questions that we can then discuss.
So, ladies and gentlemen, let us get back your attention, please, here to the panel. Table facilitators are still writing questions. I see you have done quite some work. We need a microphone on table 1 and 5. Thesis 1. In the digital age, web access empowers individuals and organizations. This is true for Africa and for Europe. Maybe it matters more for Africa because other infrastructure and so is lacking. Infrastructure, institutions, skills. But the web access empowers. So please, table 1 and 5. Let us start with table 1. What would be the most important question for this thesis?
Yeah, thank you very much for the very good discussion we had on the table. I think at the very few minutes we had thousands of very good examples on how web access empowers individuals and organizations on the African continent. However, the moment we started discussing, I think I, as a moderator, could sense a tension towards a key question, which was, is Africa's infrastructure ready to empower individuals and organizations to use the full potential of this web access? So a lot of examples were given. Is there enough power? Is there enough Wi-Fi? Is there enough data, etc., etc.? And once this is given, so if the infrastructure is given, what are the regulations and policies which will drive not only within African countries, but within a collaboration between Africa and EU? And are they ready to empower this access or this discussion between European and African countries?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Table 5.
All right. Thank you also for the great discussion. Our question is specifically around how can data become more accessible and affordable, specifically in rural areas and across all income segments of the population, because the worst thing that could happen is that there's only a part of the population that gets access to data and access to to web services, and the rest of the country and the continent is left behind. So I think that is really one of the key questions that needs to be answered for hypothesis 1.
So thank you very much for these good and very good important questions. Infrastructure, affordability. Who wants to answer on that?
So the problem with infrastructure in Africa is monopolies, right? So the telcos are basically holding the market hostage, essentially. And so I know in South Africa, discussions have begun with the government on how do we make data cheaper. And the question is, what is cheaper? And I know for a fact that telcos are doing this on purpose because they're waiting to release their own products, which will then leverage off cheaper data, which is making it difficult for us basically as startups as well, because the users, we can't attain users if the data is not cheap. So supply and demand also gets affected. But I think the first question is, I think none of us have power in terms of can we improve the infrastructure. Only a few players have a say on how or determine the future of the infrastructure in Africa. And again, it's all about us protesting. I think in South Africa, there's a movement going on of users actually protesting in terms of data being expensive, probably the most expensive across the whole continent. And so I think the first step is awareness of why data is expensive and educating people and in terms of examples across other markets that it's worked. Because in Ghana, data is significantly cheaper in compared to South Africa. And what you've seen is a lot of people consuming products. That's why we moved our company to Ghana, because we knew that data is cheaper. That means our users will be able to consume our product far much better. So again, I think it's just awareness and protesting at this point.
Okay, thank you very much. Sakile, maybe one more intervention from the panel before we go back to the tables.
The question of infrastructure is something that we all appreciate. In the sense that we are impacted directly through our work and also perhaps through our activities. And the issue when you look at, for example, power, Wi-Fi and data, it's regular, it's available, but it's not as available and reliable as it should be, right? So I think the perfect intervention here is where private sector and corporates come in, like the telcos and the internet service providers, for example, who have really are starting to understand that they must invest in giving access to the young people who are directly consumers. So in this sense, they chase the value for them by supporting the young people who will consume this data and use it for gainful employment, for example. And I think in this sense, because the corporates are doing this, they are the ones with the negotiating power, bigger bargaining power to speak to government, to support these kinds of interventions of giving access, especially in the non-rural, in the non-city areas, right? In Kenya, we have a network of hubs that are not in Nairobi. It's called the Non-Nairobi Hubs Association. And part of this infrastructure is a problem that we are tackling, because you find in Nairobi the access is really good to internet, but outside Nairobi in the rural areas, you have hubs that don't have as good coverage, right? So lobbying and leveraging on the fact that corporates like the ISPs would like to provide their services really creates value straight away, and it's a shorter way, a quicker way to get a positive intervention. Yeah.
But then we are back at the infrastructure question. Table 1 or 5, who wants to? Please, do you have a micro?
Thank you very much. I think this question is also to be addressed to the
Maybe you say your name.
Regulators, right?
Just to take your name first.
My name is Emmanuel Rukundo. I'm original from Rwanda.
Okay.
And I'm financing investment business. I think the question is also a matter of the regulators, you know, because if the regulators are not able to oblige all these big players to open up their systems, this will be very difficult to be competitive, to go for competition on the whole continent. When you take, for instance, the fintech working in the banking industry, is the only, till now, the only service which could be offered in all countries without problem borders. But as long as the telcos are just limiting the services within the national borders and not open them, it will be difficult for us as users to choose which service to use. If I'm in Ghana and I have the possibility to use a system in Kenya, I will do it. But I have no possibility as long as the regulators have not opened up the market.
Okay. Thank you very much. So for now, it's only fintech. This is very much supporting the thesis in terms of, what's the potential then in the future? Thank you. Another contribution from, on the same table. Please, the micro behind you.
My name is Yasin Berlin, and we're actually working, I'm at an institute called SPIDER at Stockholm University. We're working with regulators, and I think they have a very important role here to play. It's a matter of the regulation of the market, and it's also a matter of how how the subscribers pay for the services. So I think a package paying would be a very big step ahead. However, we have to remember that most governments in Africa, they are depending on the telcos as taxpayers. So they provide quite a lot of the money that gets into the governments.
Okay, thank you very much. An important aspect. Telcos.
Thank you. I think that you touched on a very important thing. I mean, I felt like the two questions were highly related. And for infrastructure and data to get cheap, the relevant content needs to go up. But somehow it's a chicken and egg. If I cannot access my services, my fintech services online, then there's no incentive for a telco to set up in a rural area where nobody is accessing this content and able to pay for it. There's a huge role for the regulator, and you do see it with more innovative regulators that they are thinking in an agile manner. In Rwanda now, it's not right for a telco to set up their own tower. They have to create a mesh network and share it. So for example, if one telco is going to go in the south, the other telco has to go in the north, and then some other fiber person will go in the left, right? And then that way they're sharing and they're collaborating, so that, they don't have to all invest the same amount. On the fintech side, the National Bank of Rwanda is now mandating that anybody who has your financial data, it belongs to you, right, the user. So if I give my credentials to a startup Y, then they can access my information and they can move my money much faster. And I think that only innovative regulators really can usher their countries into a much better digital age. But also it has to go hand in hand with content. So wherever you can plug in, if you can create more relevant content for rural people, very soon they're going to be able to save up to buy a device, and then once you have many people with devices, they're going to then attract the telcos to invest in that area. So it's a chicken and egg, and wherever we can plug in, we should, right?
Chicken and egg, yeah? This is actually project development, yeah? Isn't it? This is business, this is economy. Chicken and egg, you always have to throw a bit here, a bit there, a bit up there. One more. In fact, we do have only little time, yeah? Too little time. One more question from maybe table one? Yes, please.
Well, I'm Karim Amor from Casablanca, Morocco. We rose the taxation problem, which for me is a big issue, because when you give monopolies to companies such as telco companies, it's against a very big ticket to be able to provide information. And we see around the world that those monopolies are going down and down and down again in the profit of collaboration. The access to internet is, as we all know, probably going to change within the next 10 to 15 years with the low altitude satellites that are going to be launched, and the access will be provided everywhere in Africa, whereas there's no access. So it'll be very, very helpful. Then we have to politically address the monopoly issues, because on one side you have the taxation, on the other side you have how do you empower economy to bring more tax because there's more value. So there's a kind of arbitration in between taxed monopolies and taxed on value.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just for your information, we keep all these arguments, we will put them together then and continue discussion. So we hope nothing will get lost. Unfortunately, the time is too little. We have to move on to the second thesis, which Amolo will do.
Yes.
But all in all, I think the first thesis in terms of empowerment, there was very much agreement on that. And above that, much potential for the future. Access to everybody, now it's only fintech. In the future, it might be more. Please, Amolo. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. So now we move on to income. We have table 2 and table 6. Yes? That was tackling this thesis. And this thesis, what we are looking at is that we need to create innovative solutions. In Europe, we've had the Industrial Revolution. You have the traditional jobs where you have big companies that are able to provide for the masses. These traditional jobs have not come to Africa. But we are all faced with this challenge of the digital age that we have to be innovative and we have to move away from the need for traditional jobs. So let's have table 2 present the question, followed by table 6. Microphone?
Yeah.
Oh, you have it. Welcome.
Hello, good morning.
It's working.
Working? Okay. So we had a lot of interesting questions around this very broad thesis, but we finally narrowed it down to the point, to the term of industrialization, because traditional jobs is something like a synonym for industrial economy. And we agreed on the question which sounds, can digital economy succeed without industrial basis? And that relates to many fields. It relates to the field of technical skills, of industrial infrastructure, because whatever digital business you're doing, you need some kind of technical basis, you need power supply, you need hardware. So that is very much related to the industrial basis. It also relates to the question of income, as you put it here, because if you have no stability in your life, like as you grow up, if you can't attend school regularly, if you have no background in your family which allows you to develop ideas, you have to earn money early on, then you will be very limited in your development. And that is something which is a very important precondition for the development of a new, agile digital economy. It also relates, of course, to the question of social security. Social security has to be there or is there in any society, wherever you look. But this typical industrial era type of social security, which is institutionalized, allows people to become independent. You don't rely in terms of social security on your family ties, on your village, but you have a certain informal basis that allows you, when you're sick, you get treatment. When you're out of work, you get at least a certain amount that keeps you afloat. So all these sort of industrial era aspects, they are obviously, in the opinion of our table, very important for the development of a digital economy in Africa, but in Europe just as well.
Great. Thank you. Table 6.
Table 6, with its very distinguished participants, follows in broad strokes what our colleagues at Table 2 have said. We acknowledge the potential of the digital transformation, but we do identify significant gaps in the traditional industries. So while we acknowledge that things are happening, there are African units that have marketable, competitive products, not only nationally or regionally, but also intercontinental-wise. So African companies would have potentials to export to Europe, but is Europe aware of these products? And how would Europe become aware? But again, coming back to the gaps that we have identified, we have had opinions of the income distribution that is being generated. It's an open question. We had access to health. That is also still open. We touched upon the infrastructure questions, like our colleagues from Table 2. If you don't have infrastructure, then you probably will not have a trickle-down effect. So to sum up, we acknowledge that there are certain lighthouses. We had a colleague here titling some of these enterprises as lighthouses. Will they be able to generate the trickle-down effect that we all hope for?
Great. Panelists, anyone wants to take on these questions?
It's the same story that said that Africa has great potential, right? But not much, I can say, growth or profit or money coming out of it. But I would like to maybe perhaps throw the challenge. All these problems that we have, are indeed more like opportunities, right? For business growth and for investment and for innovation. Mm-hmm. And in a unique sense, are in these opportunities that could drive a kind of leapfrog change, because if you have an agile industry and you're trying to solve, an agile approach, I beg your pardon, and we already know where we want to go. Why don't we just leapfrog as opposed to going through, for example, all of what Europe went through to get to where it is, to just using the shortest path, the shortest, most value-creating and profitable path, and of course, leverage on collaboration with which to get there. All these problems of health, for example, the issues of infrastructure, these are opportunities actually for investment because you already have a market. And to drive back to the issue of markets, Africa has a very young population and it's the fastest growing market in the world right now. This is the time to invest and build businesses to serve these markets. And I could invite, of course, other comments. Yeah.
Anyone else? Is industrialization and digital age tied
I think this is a very relevant question today, and I'm sure we don't have the answers to this. This is a conversation that every government in Africa is having. I mean, you have a rising youth population, and sometimes they're not as educated as you'd like them to be. So how can you leapfrog? Somebody once gave an analogy, like to leapfrog means you have to have hip strength. And that hip strength comes from years of industrialization and doing other technical work, right?
Yeah.
So for me, the leapfrogging aspect into the digital age, how can you go beyond having the industries and then, so slowly going into more soft services without having that background? And it's still a question up in the air because we now need to create 1.7 million jobs every day. Those jobs are not all going to be high tech. We have a lot of demand on the continent. We are still net importers of goods, right? So for me, that's also an opportunity to create industries there because we still need industries. So it has to be investment in both aspects, right? In the digital economy, but also in the traditional necessary infrastructure for that to eventually happen and to create jobs for the mass.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I think leapfrogging is impossible for Africa, and I think industrialization comes with capacity building, right? It builds skills within the economy, and those skills then can be developed for the digital age, right? So we can build something on top of that. And so I think for us is, I speak to a lot of African governments with the work that we do, and everyone is putting hopes on tech. Technology is going to solve every problem. But if there's no skills within the economy, then we have a bigger problem. And I think we just need to understand that we can't do it differently, right? There's going to be lighthouses. There's going to be specific case studies in specific markets that will say we can do it differently. But I don't think in Africa we can leapfrog. Like you said, we need hip strength, right? And these industries are the hip strength to be able to then grow into a digital economy. So I think we just need to be realistic with ourselves, and that we need to go through industrialization process.
Yeah. So maybe some comments. Do we have the time to go through industrialization like Europe did? And the buzzword here is leapfrogging. Do you agree? Do you disagree? We have a comment from table, from here, from there, and quite a number of comments. Yes.
Yes. I have my colleague here. I don't. Yes. She asked, is Africa, for instance, Angola in a digital age?
Mm-hmm.
So we have this question: is Angola in a digital age? So people they can't think when they don't have the basis for that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that industrialization is one of the most important things that we need to make effort to make it grow, and it comes with education. And without education, we don't have the digital age in the country. So I will talk a little about.
Well, try to keep it short.
Yes.
We're running out of time.
Yes. The example is when we will go to Mars, if we are not investing on industrial in our countries, like the base.
Yes.
Yes, we will.
The basic needs.
Yes, the basic. So we will never make machines. We will never make nothing big to someday build a spaceship to go to other planets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we'll allow only one person who has a very quick question, comment. Someone who hasn't spoken yet. There. Microphone, please. Mm-hmm.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the invitations, and I will follow the point of view of the colleague there, because the problem in Africa, the big problem is, from my point of view, the educations. We have to understand why. We have to understand where we are. Mm-hmm. We cannot dreaming, you understand, because we have a lot of problems like corruption and so on, which is making things bad. The first problem is to understand. We have to educate people. Mm-hmm. We have to educate people. Education, and the rest will follow, yes. Definitely.
Yes. So it seems like this thesis is raising more questions than answers, and it's very clear that leapfrogging is an important issue that we need to discuss, but then are we going to take shortcuts? So education, capacity building, knowing what we need, still very important. We move on to
thesis 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we are lowering our flying altitude. You might have seen, yeah? We are not very abstract anymore. We are going more concrete. Thesis 3. Purpose-driven organizations will solve local problems. We are talking now really about collaboration. Bernhard Hölzl, please.
Thank you, Hans. Yes, my name is Bernhard, and I'll keep it very short. So the question is, purpose-driven thesis will create local jobs. And you raised a lot of interesting questions around that topic, mostly around, how can we create partnerships, how can we keep up sustainable partnerships long-term. But then we narrowed it down to one question, which is how to avoid purpose cities over profit. Because if you have a lot of problems, yes, you can solve them with creative and purpose-driven approaches, but they might not create profit that is needed to attract investors. And on the other side, if you solve needs, you can create profit. So what is the balance, and how do we find a good balance in order to solve that issue?
Thank you very much. Purpose over profit. This refers very much to the aid industry, I would say. At least this is my... But please, the panel, who wants to respond to that? Christoph Steindl.
Well, how to find the balance? For me, that has never been difficult. Like, purpose gives you meaning in life, that's all good. But if you don't earn a living, that's worse. So, I frankly, I don't see so much of a problem in having too much purpose and there's always a kind of a pyramid, and you need to get the lower levels of the pyramid right to get up to the purpose. I always, when I think of non-profit organizations, I always give the advice that if you make some more profit, you can do more good. So, is it really a constraint?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is someone saying from the IT industry, of course, which is quite flourishing and.
Maybe not a constraint. So if I got you right to say if the purpose is there, you will, along the way, also make profit at the end. Or the question I guess we had is, purpose does not necessarily mean profit, but you need profit in order to build a sustainable business long term.
Maybe you could say purpose is good for business. So when you think of a triple bottom line approach, where you're looking at the social aspects, the environmental aspect is, of course, your traditional bottom line, which is profit. These three should go hand in hand, because if you take care of your customer, they will buy again. So it's just good for business, to use a basic illustration. But absolutely, the interventions need to be there because of the current context of Africa. But these interventions don't need to be looked at as kind of destructive or loss-making, because there's always this issue of looking at the impact, and it just depends on how long you want to be in the game. If you're in it for the long term, absolutely you'll benefit. If you're looking for a short term, maybe you may feel a bit worried about that aspect. Yeah.
Some comment from the table?
Thank you. My name is Kingsley. So for me, the way I see it is there might be a huge need to make clear definitions, and terminologies, because in terms of purpose, and solving problems and making profit, the question arises of whose responsibility is it to actually solve problems. So I'll make a clear example of what a problem might look like and what meeting a need or demand might look like. So take, for example, a guy named Namodu, who is in some remote village. A typical problem would be not having access to clean drinking water, right? That's a problem. So whose responsibility is it to fix that problem? Is it the government? Is it a business, right? Now, meeting a need or meeting a demand would be the same individual. He's in his house, he's thirsty, but rather than looking for access to clean water, he reaches into his fridge and he has to make a decision whether to drink Coke or Sprite or Fanta, right? So I think that once we have those clear distinctions or definitions, it becomes easier for businesses to say, look, my purpose is making profit, and there's nothing wrong with that. So if a business sets up and says, oh, I want to sort of connect villages, build transportation, then a different question arises. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I think that more and more with the millennials that are coming up, you cannot attract them to your company, especially with the scarcity of talent, without selling a purpose of what you're doing while you're doing, right? Mm. Government has bandwidth because they have taxes. A business has bandwidth because it has revenue. Mm-hmm. And an NGO has bandwidth because they raise money. So we all need funds to do some type of work that we want to do. So the purpose, for me, I think it's something completely different. Now, if you do have a purpose for how you operate, that's great, and more companies are actually spending time to think about what their values are, what the culture they want to have in their company and extend beyond is. More companies are being tasked with being also civic organizations to some level. I mean, you do see this in America where employees are pressuring their companies to be more involved in the general discourse of the problems society is facing. But for me, it's two different things, revenues and purpose. I mean, most of the times if you're doing work, it's for a certain goal, right? So if you need funds to process that, then you need funds, right? It's two separate things, as he was saying, I could imagine.
So, thank you very much. Millennials need profit, and this is true for Africans as well as Europeans. Need profit, I said? No, need purpose. Need purpose, yes. It seems that thesis 3 is quite well accepted to me. Yeah, but we will continue discussion. Thesis 4, please.
Yes, so we finish off with co-creation. And this is the co-creation that we see shaping the African-European collaboration. So we'll quickly ask table, that is table 4? No, sorry. That's your table there? To
4.
talk about. It is 4, okay.
So
Go ahead.
we have a lot of questions. I try to make it short.
Wow, those are 4 questions.
Yeah, there are 4. So we give 1 or 2 to discuss. So we talked about the definition of the meaning, co-creation versus collaboration, or what does it mean and what does it stand for? So is there a difference or not? So this was one question. Perhaps you have a meaning to that. One thing is, how can we achieve a better communication to avoid the cultural divide in the co-creation? And the last, and I think important question is, why is the existing co-creation not working good enough? So we do co-creation still since years. Why isn't it good enough? And why should we do things better or in another way?
Great. The 3 C's, co-creation, collaboration, communication. Who wants to take it first?
I'll take the first.
Okay.
I will quickly say, for me, what co-creation means is that we both face a problem and we decide how we're going to approach it. Now, the challenges to this is sometimes the cost of market acquisition. Somebody has a solution. They've used it in Europe somewhere. Maybe they've used it in an emerging market somewhere. Then they want you to swallow it whole. You know, I've done this here. I've done this in Indonesia. Can you buy this? I'm like, I don't know. We need to adjust it. Like, does it have this feature? Or does it do this? Does it take into account this type of data that we already have? So maybe it's the cost of customization or discussion that maybe companies have. And that may be something that we can look into. But in terms of communication, global culture, I think that more the technology sector is merging on some key philosophies that we go by. Maybe agility, design thinking, and looking at the problem together. So for there, we're creating a global culture that I think is going to help us. But the first one of like a cost of new customer acquisition is still, you know, very low in most companies. They budget it as like, well, you go meet somebody and you sell them something. So I think maybe we can hear from someone else how they plan to approach that.
The way I see co-creation, it's about really merging values. So, for example, if you were to collaborate with an organization, perhaps in Europe and one in Africa, it would be what's in it that's in line with the mandate of that organization and in line with the mandate of our organization in Africa, and where do these two merge? Because when you have a point of confluence, then it's really easy to then drive into collaboration and I guess lead to better communication when you both understand what you're getting out of this merger to co-create. Yeah.
So do we need to create or to understand the core benefits? Anyone last comment from the table? Or you're happy with your 4 questions? Yes.
Yes, I will say the collaborations or the corporations already existing since a long time. This is not a new history. The question is now, what is the need? What is the need of the people? What needs to be done concretely? And what about the education? What about the prioriseren, how we say in German?
Priorities.
Yes, the priority, yes. Because without priority, without knowledge in project management, regarding infrastructure, regarding all, we need first to understand what we are doing, where we are going, and what about the cost, what we have and what not. And this is the basic topic, yes, of course. Yes. So it's not working because people are not getting or are not coming with. And to make it better is to make people understand the need and how to move forward.
Yes. So for us to see the need and, of course, to highlight the benefits. So I think we
So I've just heard that the official opening is delayed for a couple of minutes, so we have another 3 minutes.
So we use the 3 minutes to wind up, or?
Yes.
Okay, so we want this to continue. We want to continue engaging with you, so it would be great if you could give us your contacts. You can drop us your card on your way out. And we do want to create a platform where we can continue to communicate and formulate a message for the heads of state, heads of government, and possibly end up with a manifesto to change African-European collaboration. So to be able to concretely answer the questions that we've raised here and be able to present this as what we want to see in terms of African-European collaboration.
So we are at the beginning of a discussion, it seems. We are not able yet to formulate a message for the heads of states and heads of governments, but we will do so. We will continue the discussion on the basis of these 4 theses. The first one, empowerment, I think was very well accepted, even with a big potential in the future. Income, steady jobs, that's the tricky one, tricky questions. How will it be? Will Africa ever, even if it goes into industrialization, which many countries are doing now, will it create steady jobs as it did in Europe before that? Maybe not. Purpose-driven organization, yes, that's the future. Agile teams and co-creation, we are in that. We will continue that discussion. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you very much for all the stable facilitators. Thank you very much for the panelists. Yes. And thank you very much for your contribution.